your fitness business podcast snapshot, reimagining your business for 2021, pushing a leadership message, and how is URSA pivoting for 2021? All of that and more coming up in today's show. You're listening to the fitness industry's leading fitness business podcast for owners and managers. The Fitness Business Podcast provides an educational platform for our listeners worldwide. Our variety of guests are here to share their expert advice, tips, and knowledge with you, our FBP family. This month's interviews are brought to you by MyZone. Happy 2021 FBP family. We made it. Yes, we are out of the shadows of 2020 and ready to look forward. I am your host, Dory Nugent, and I can't wait to share all of our 2021 guests with you. Now, our first guest of the year is Brent Darden, and this is episode number 332. MyZone is our podcast partner this month, so let's hear a quick message from them before we begin our show. MyZone is the industry's leading wearable technology platform that drives engagement and provides personal feedback and motivation through gamification, wherever your members choose to work out. Go digital to provide a hybrid offering. Your members will love you for it. Learn more at myzone.org. Brent Darden is the interim president and CEO of URSA. Brent is here today to talk about pivoting your business for a successful 2021 and to give us the inside scoop on how URSA is pivoting for 2021. Welcome back for another episode of the Fitness Business Podcast. Our topic today is about pivoting your business, and who better to get advice from but Brent Darden, the interim president and CEO of URSA. Brent, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be with Active again.
Yeah. You certainly have made your presence here with everybody on the podcast. So you're a big part of our family, and we're excited to have you back again.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and really appreciate Active support. That's one thing I have to say about just starting this role is the groundswell of support truly has brought me to tears, literally. It's just been so overwhelming how many people have stepped up and said encouraging things and, offered to help.
Yes. JT, you talk about somebody that's always willing to raise his hand and roll his sleeves up. He is definitely the man. Actually, everybody here at the podcast we'll do whatever we can to help whoever we can as well. So, well, I'm not sure I should even say this, but I'm just going to. But how about them Cowboys?
Yeah, thanks, Dory. Oh, man. Yeah, I don't even know. I don't have the words even to describe the pain that we're feeling here about our Cowboys.
Well, the Philadelphia Eagles aren't doing much better. So, I think we'll just drop the whole subject and move on.
Yeah, let's move on.
So, Brent, I read an article of yours on the URSA website entitled Fitness Industry Veteran on the Opportunity for a Fresh Start. And I really appreciated your quote that said, pushing the reset button and planning your revival will help ensure a successful future. I think that's such a relevant quote right now.
Thank you. Yeah. A lot of businesses are going through this right now. URSA in particular was in this unique space given the canceling of the convention and trade show and now the pandemic and everything that our industry is going through, not just the club operators that we're all more familiar with sometimes being closed or open with restrictions and the diminished revenue streams they've got, but the suppliers are also hurting because they're not selling as much equipment, right? The club operators are not buying the equipment and using those resources. So the impact is just so broad. It's a critical time in our industries.
It It sure is. And, we do spend a lot of time focusing just on the clubs in general, but we do really need to try to remember the vendors are taking a massive hit as well. And that's everything from hospitality supplies, cleaning supplies,
Right.
To fitness equipment, you name it. It's just been a tough year for the fitness industry.
No doubt.
But we're hoping that 2021 brings a little bit of a brighter start. And I just want to talk to you a little bit about, calling on your experience. What do business owners need to do to reimagine their business for 2021?
Yeah, I think, if I reflect on what we've sort of been undertaking at URSA and how that's been transpiring and happening, I would say there's several things that as I thought back to reflect on. One is, if you really want to reimagine your business, you've got to sort of evaluate, explore, investigate, and assess where things are currently. To borrow Jim Collins' quote, you got to, turn over the rock and you've got to face the brutal facts of reality about where you actually are. Then I think you determine where the value lies within your organization. Not only what your unique selling points are, but, a little bit deeper than that of what can you be really, really great at? And then from there, set your strategic anchors. I call them strategic anchors. Some people might just refer to them as their core values or their core competencies. And then the next step is aligning the actions and the plans you have based on the strategic anchors that you've identified already. Then next is deploying resources to those actions and those plans. And that's one thing I want to spend just a second talking about, because, one of the reasons I feel like I was invited to be in this role really wasn't because of my vast experience running a trade association or that I'm the smartest guy around, but I had relationships with individuals and they felt like I would be somebody that would be inclusive and a bridge builder. I've heard that term several times. And so inviting people to be part of the solution and contribute, I think, has been a big part of that reimagination. So that's one thing I'd encourage the people listening, is that you don't have to figure it out yourself. You've got customers, just like URSA has customers that are willing to help out if you ask. And often they can bring, different perspectives and really unique talents to the task. Next is identifying sort of what not to do when you talk about strategy and how you're trying to reimagine your business. I think too often businesses get caught up in thinking, I need to do this now, I need to also do this, but they forget that there's always a strategic limitation on resources. No matter how big the company is, you only have so much manpower, so much financial resources, so much time. And so you've really got to stop doing some things and identifying some of those things that you're going to quit doing. And then I only have two more. The next one is executing on those plans. And once again, being very specific about, here's what we've decided needs to happen. Now let's put some parameters and definitions around it. Who's going to do it? How's it going to happen? What's the person responsible? What's the deadline? How are we going to measure success? All those things. And then, of course, the last one is be ready to adapt. If there's one thing the pandemic has required, I think, for those that are going to survive it, is that they're learning to pivot, they're learning to adapt. They're closed and were closed for a while. Then many of them have reopened. Now some of them are closed back down. And so it's really pressed upon us the need to always be adaptable. We can have these great plans, but sometimes things fly in the face of those great plans, and you just have to make the best of the situation that you possibly can and try and survive. And that's something I've heard a lot, from club operators and suppliers that have found ways to do that and keep the business, somewhat viable going forward.
Yeah, it's interesting because, just interviewing guests week after week, we obviously do talk a lot about COVID, and I am finding that those that are coming out of this with at least a little bit of success are the ones that adapted quickly and pivoted quickly. And it's interesting because some talked about the whole pivoting being exhausting. And then it was inspiring that some leaders talked about pivoting as exciting and kind of got their enthusiasm again.
Right.
They got excited about, well, let's try something new. Let's pull together, kind of like a little hoorah type of
Right.
feeling. So it's interesting. You really, yes, you have to pivot, I think, in order to come out of this successful, but got to do your best to try to look at it with wide eyes and excitement and get your team on board.
Yeah, I'd agree. I've had people ask me, well, how's it going, Brent? I don't know how many times I've heard that recently. And I used two words. I said, well, it's exhilarating and it's exhausting, both.
I think you're exactly right on that. And you know what? It's okay to be exhausted. You have to just manage your time, that you take a little bit of downtime. Luke Carlson has a great term, clarity break. He talks a lot about. So sometimes you just have to take a clarity break and recharge your batteries so that you can go back to enthusiasm again.
Yep.
So Brent, you often speak on leadership, especially through Rex Roundtables, where you help owners develop their leadership skills. What are you finding in the Rex Roundtables that the message that you're trying to push to all these business owners over and over again?
Well, first I'd say I learn as much from the Rex Roundtables or more than they learn from me. Those are really set up to be peer-to-peer sort of educational components. But, when I'm giving presentations and have the opportunity to give some coaching around leadership, I guess there's 4 or 5 things that I really hang my hat on, if you want to use that sort of language, that aren't so scientific, but they're just very straightforward and they seem to have served me well. Number one is just be yourself. I think Brene Brown says it. What does she say? She says, who you are is how you lead. And I think that's right. You have to lead with your own style, your own communication, and your own with your own passion. And that's going to be different from person to person. Second is I'm a big fan of just being really transparent and open about your plans and what's happening. That's one of the things I heard repeatedly once I stepped into this role from members of the association was they just wanted more transparency about where the association is and what's its current status and what are you working on, involve us and open the door and let us see, what's happening a little bit. Another one I would say would be inclusive. And of course, I mean, inclusive, related to gender and race, but really more importantly, I'm talking about just involving others. I touched on that before. Some people would call it the leader's invitation, where you're inviting people to participate. You're not telling them what to do. You're not even really asking them to do a specific job. You're asking them for their help to get something accomplished. And there's a big difference there. When you ask people to, will you join me in helping get this accomplished? Here's why we're working on it. I think you'd really be valuable. Is that something you could help with? That's different than giving someone an assignment. And so I think that's a real critical pillar for it. And then I guess if I had 2 others, I'd say constantly get feedback. And the best kind of feedback I always say is the kind you ask for, rather than wait for people to give it to you. So if you're constantly asking, colleagues, staff, customers for sure, and you're listening to that feedback, and this is really important, that you're doing something with it, right? You're not just taking it and then continuing on the path. And then in the context of all that, just, if you can be as gracious as you can with people.
I find that some leaders struggle with transparency because it's a control thing. And then there's other leaders that are, again, it kind of goes back to be who you are. Number one, of this is who I am. This is what's going on. I'm just going to be real. I'm just going to put it out there.
Yeah. And this is completely off, the questions that we were talking about before, Dory, but I'm glad you asked it. I think I've learned, and of course, I'm a little older than most of the audience probably listening now. And there is, I think, some insight that comes to you as you gain more experience and age. And one of those is, I think I've become more transparent. The older I've gotten, the more experienced I've gotten, and the more confident that I've gotten. And so for younger leaders that may be listening to this podcast, I think when you're younger, you tend to be more in need of feeling in control. and a little less vulnerable because you don't want to expose yourself to being second guessed. You want to be right. You want people to follow you, sometimes blindly because you're the person in charge. And I know that's a very general statement, but I would just encourage leaders to say, the most confident leaders that are really comfortable with how they're leading, and they're leading with purpose, and they're leading with compassion, also tend to be those that are vulnerable, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well said.
They can be wrong, and it's okay. They can not have all the answers, and it's okay. Mm-hmm. Somebody can have a better answer than them, and that's okay. And sometimes people just don't have the confidence really to accept that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well said, Brent. Well said. We had a guest on again a couple weeks ago. His name was Al Amador, and he really talked about the power of trust amongst the team with the leader. And that is something a leader has to work on, and they have to earn that trust. So I think that's very important also in a leadership role.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The absence of trust, there's been surveys done for decades about what's the most important quality in a leader. And it can list out, competency, charisma, expertise, ability to communicate, all different types of adjectives that are all very positive. And over, the number one thing that's most important to people is trust. Mm-hmm. If you can develop one skill only as a leader, it's got to be the trust of those that choose to follow you. And that's an important component, the choose to follow you, because everyone has a choice. Mm-hmm. And you can command leadership, or you can have a leadership style that people choose to get behind. And of course, we all want the latter.
Yeah, and I think that trust kind of goes back to what you said when you were giving your list. And you talked about, hey, you want to ask somebody to do something and then tell them why they're going to do it. And I think the why there is so important because people want to know why they're doing something. And if they trust you, that why is going to be much easier to sell than if they don't trust you.
Yeah, an analogy I like to use around this topic, Dory, that might be helpful for people to sort of grasp it is that I like to think of leadership and being more of a soaker hose than a sprinkler, right? So if you're a leader that, adheres to the sprinkle theory, if you can imagine a sprinkler out in the yard, it's casting out all this message points and they're dropping all over. And some of that, because it's coming through the air, is evaporating before it even hits the ground. Some of it hits the ground and runs off. Some of it hits the ground and puddles. It's not really absorbed. And I think some leaders that only take up the opportunity to be that charismatic, sort of the leader that casts vision, lose sight of the fact that what you really want is this growth organically from within the organization, like a soaker hose, right? Let it soak in, let it be slow, develop the relationships, build the trust. And from the roots up, that organization and that effort will be much greater. And much more productive than just running as I say, a sprinkler type leadership style.
Mm-hmm. Brent, for listeners out there that are not feeling the enthusiasm as much with pivoting, but they're feeling more of the exhaustion, what one piece of advice could you give to them to try to just change their mindset?
Well, you touched on it already, I think, Dory, and that is, the Harvard Business Review recommends 3 things always to keep people engaged. And I think that's true anytime, certainly when you're going through change. And that is 1, make sure people understand the why of what you're asking them to do. I think that's extremely powerful, especially when you're asking people to pivot or change direction from something that may have been, aligned in the organization in the past. Why are we changing direction? And why is this a good move? So that's number 1. Number 2 is make sure they're empowered, whatever that new direction is, to be a part of it. And then number 3, make sure they are recognized for the meaningful work they're doing and they understand what their role is as far as this change or pivot, as you refer to it, is all about.
Brent, I know you feel the same way I do, but man, my heart goes out to all these facilities that, many states are going through another round of shutdowns. And The gyms are always included right there in on that list of shutdowns along with the restaurants. So I know you feel the same way I do about all these clubs having to survive a second round. So I know a lot of the gym owners look to IHRSA for some guidance. IHRSA's been playing a big part ever since March. They've really been trying to step in and help guide the business owners. It would be remiss of me not to ask, as we've been talking about the whole pivoting and reimagining, what does 2021 look like for IHRSA?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would start by saying we're really excited about the future. We've been on a march to reimagine IHRSA, which is where we started this conversation, and evaluating and then sort of resetting almost everything. So we're really excited about the opportunity for 2021. And part of the reason is I think we're in this sort of unique, I've been calling it a monumental moment in our industry's history, where there's been a lot of changes underway. Obviously, unfortunately, there's been quite a large section of clubs that have closed down that aren't coming back in the coming year. So the market has been changed. I think there's pent-up demand from our members that have been, isolated and not able to go to the gym. And so I think they're going to be really anxious to come back. For the clubs that are able to survive, there's going to be a more abundance of members because some of the clubs in different markets have closed down, which means those members are going to be looking very eagerly to join something else, in that particular market. So there is going to be opportunity for, I think, people in our industry that can make it, through the first of the year and the vaccines and the light at the end of the tunnel. That would be one thing just about our industry overall. I've talked with lots of suppliers, lots of club operators, private equity groups, watch the indicators, across the broad industry. And the agreement really is it's going to be a great rebound if we can make it to that point. When you look at other industries, Australia being one where Justin is, I mean, they've been open and they're sort of looking in the rearview mirror at the pandemic, and business has been booming, right? It's really good. So there's hope and examples out there for those businesses that can survive. And as far as the association goes, yeah, we're poised for the road to revival. And I've also used the road to redemption. And, maybe that comes with my background in faith, but it's not a redemption of getting revenge. It's quite a different word, but it's where we come out of this and we're redeeming the value that we offer to society at large to play a role in this effort behind being part of the health continuum on a really big scale. And I think our industry really more than ever is so passionate about putting a stake in the ground and making sure we're part of that conversation and that narrative going forward. So not only do I think the health and fitness industry and health clubs and suppliers in particular that make it next year are going to have a really great year toward the end of the year. I think the convention and trade show in September is going to be spectacular. But I also think there's going to be a greater shift than we've seen in many, many decades around the consciousness of the average person around the world about the value of health and fitness related to immunity, related to mental health, and overall wellness.
Well, I think in that 2 minutes there that you just spoke, you came up with 3 amazing titles for the IHRSA convention for 2021.
Okay, you remind me what those are later.
Reimagine. You had 3. I'll get back to you on that. I was like, oh, there's one. There's another one.
Reimagine, revival, and redemption.
That's it. They were all ours. That's it. You heard it here, folks. IHRSA 2021 is going to begin with an R this year. Their theme.
Get your pen ready now for Keep Me's Fit Bizpiration.
What are your 3 tips for reimagining a business?
Well, like most of my other answers, Dory, this is not a big theory. It's just straight up what I think it really boils down to. Number 1 is I think it's first admitting that you need to reimagine the business, just really embracing this needs to change and accepting that mindset. I think your question when I read it earlier was like some people put their head in the sand and some people embrace change and others are in between. So I think it really just starts with the leader acknowledging a change is needed. We need to reimagine our business. That's number one. Number two is easy, and it's the, traditional SWOT analysis, looking at your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, looking at how you can leverage what you do really well and multiply that to a unique selling proposition in your marketplace. And going through that really self-analysis to make sure you have a good understanding of where your strengths and weaknesses are and how you can benefit from those. And then the final one is commit to it. Once you've decided, go all in, commit yourself, commit your organization to that effort and communicate. If there's one sort of shortcoming I would put on myself as I've been in this role with IHRSA, I've been moving so fast and trying to get so many things done so quickly that I've communicated with the groups that are working on particular tasks at times really well, but I've sometimes neglected to share that vision with others that would benefit from hearing that same message. So that's one caution I would give. You always have to be communicating that vision and direction with the broad audience so everybody can follow along.
Keep Me, smarter member retention. KeepMe.ai.
It's time to get back to the episode with Brent. Brent, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today. You're like family to us. So thank you so much for your time.
Oh, pleasure to be here. I really appreciate y'all asking me.
Yeah, I wish our listeners could see your backdrop right now. It is like the ultimate Christmas scene. I feel like I should have a cup of hot cocoa as I sit here and talk with you.
Good. That's the way it should be. Well, I appreciate y'all having me. I just, if I could leave the audience with a couple things about IHRSA. One is we just launched the Active and Safe Commitment, which is our industry's version of proclaiming to the consumer that health clubs are safe and sanitary and clean and all those things. There is a similar thing in the hospitality industry that hotels have. There's a similar thing in the restaurant industry, and this is ours. So if you could investigate that, go to IHRSA.org and look up Active and Safe. It's right there on the homepage. It's easy. We're getting a lot of traction throughout our industry, and that's helping everybody stay open and gain opening again. And then, as you already touched base on, we are having the convention and trade show in September. So it seems like a long way away. Right now, it looks like we were really smart, and that's maybe not the case, but hopefully COVID will be in our rearview mirror. The vaccines will have occurred. All the restrictions will be lifted. And it's actually IHRSA's 40th anniversary from inception in September. So we're looking forward to a grand, glorious celebration in person. In person.
Well, I feel like when you announced about the IHRSA 2021 convention, all of our listeners just started cheering, clapping. Yeah. So I know I am super excited, and you will definitely see me there.
Of course. And we look forward to that. It'll be great.
All right, Brent. Well, thank you again so much. I will get all of this information on the Fitness Business Podcast show notes so that it makes it a real simple click for our listeners and our FBP family to get right to that IHRSA website.
Great. Thank you, Dory.
You're welcome.
Are you interested in increasing your center's income and your trainer's income from small group training? Tribe Team Training is the new way to get more members engaged in small group training and paying extra. Click the Tribe Team Training link in the show notes or go to tribeteamtraining.com.au/podcast for your free formula to see how much income you can make from small group training.
Quickfire 5.
Quickfire 5 guest is Adam Sedlak, owner, founder of UFC Gyms. Co-founder and president of UFC Gyms, Adam Sedlak is our Quickfire 5 guest. Adam, welcome to the podcast.
Dory, it's good to be here. Good to see you.
Great to have you on the show. Let's do your Quickfire 5 questions.
Fantastic.
Number one, who inspires you in life and why?
Inspiration in my life. Well, I think, when you look at who inspires you, it really becomes about why are we here? I think number one is your family, and whether it's your parents or your immediate family, like your wife and kids, there's this influence around you that you always want to try to impress, take care of, and support. So I think family is an important one because that's the start of your legacy. I think the second item would be my team and the people that I get to work with every single day, whether it's in the corporate support center or in our gyms or our franchise partners or our international partners. So many inspiring stories out there because some start from members and they become an owner, all the way from managers that have been with me for a couple decades now that continue to reinvent themselves. And then I think the third thing would be the mentors that we have. And, I've had the opportunity to be mentored by such great people like Mark Mastroff and Jim Rowley and Neil Spruce. And heck, even a guy like Alex Rodriguez. You don't get that very often to spend time in a room with those people and to have the ability to get their feedback, their insight, their perspective with the way they see things and the leverage all those experiences is incredibly inspiring for me.
Well, I can't agree with you more. Family, coworkers, and mentors, 3 great categories for inspiration. So let's take it right into question number 2, and that is, why do you do what you do?
Well, I love what I do, first and foremost, and I think that really has to resonate with each and every one of us. That's got to be the prevailing motivator of why we do what we do. But, I think that number one is I have this opportunity through people, through my actions and through my work to impact a lot of lives around this globe. So whether you're a UFC gym in Australia or a UFC gym in California, my people, my team, the people that I get to work with every single day can truly impact everybody where those gyms are, those trade areas, those markets. We can really, really have an impact. So I think that's number one. And I also like the fact that we can see so many careers grow. So when you start a gym, it's so fun to watch those things come to life, right? Because you start with this empty plot of real estate, and then all of a sudden you build a gym, and all of a sudden you need team members to be part of that gym, and you see people go in there, and there's a switch that ignites in people, and all of a sudden they have a career that they are doing stuff they never thought possible. And to see careers grow is just it's amazing. And then I think the third item would be a fitness legacy. We have an opportunity, especially during these interesting times, to create a legacy of fitness and health and conditioning and really change the way people look at themselves personally and then look at the world if you think about it from an external perspective. So I think creating this incredible fitness legacy through a great team is going to be a fantastic opportunity.
Well, great answers. We're going to get into number 3 of our quick fire 5 questions. This is always my favorite. If you are not doing what you are doing, what would you be doing?
Yeah, this is always a good question, and I got to tell you, when I reflect on that question, it's difficult for me because I don't think I could be doing anything else. I think I would have trouble getting a job in almost any specific trade. I love fitness so much; it's all I've ever known in my professional life. But I guess I could be a good advocate, spokesperson for Hair Club for Men, or maybe a few other types of industries related to hair.
Now, just for our listeners out there, because they can't see you, but I can. You're just missing a couple hairs. That's all.
Do you like the way I parted my hair this evening?
Listen, I will say it is shiny and smooth.
Thank you. It's a compliment.
All right. So you don't want to be a NASCAR driver. You don't want to be a rock star. You just want to be a representative for Hair Club for Men.
Exactly.
All right. So what's your one book, podcast, or blog, Facebook group that you would recommend to our listeners?
Well, Dory, besides this one, I think when for me, I love to read and I love to listen to audiobooks and also podcasts, because you get a lot of authenticity from podcasts. But I think one of the books that really helped me understand people was Emotional Intelligence 2.0, because you truly become aware of yourself and you become aware of others and the impact that you have on one's life. And once you truly own that and you get it, it allows you to look at things differently, and it allows you to communicate in a different way that hopefully can speak to a larger audience.
Yeah. And, you said about you love podcasts. One thing I love about podcasts is you get books from podcasts. You get book recommendations. So that's pretty cool.
You get some of the best book recommendations, including from this podcast, right?
All right. Final question. Here we go. What will be one action item the FBP family will take away from your main interview next week?
I think the big action item I would say is this is a time of reflection. And, all of us, listen, life is subjective, right? What some of us think is important may not be important to others. What some businesses or fitness gyms or clubs have as a value proposition, we may think it's great, but maybe the customer doesn't, or vice versa. So now's the time to reflect and take a look at where are the strengths of your business, where are the strengths of your people, where are the strengths of your process, and are there specific areas that maybe need to improve or don't need to improve? And so I think reflection is probably the best piece of advice or post-interview that for those of us that are part of organizations or fitness companies or any service business can take away from our interview.
Here's a message from our podcast friends at Precor.
Tribe, if you haven't explored a functional training space for your gym, then now is the time. With Queenex Functional Training by Precor, there is a unit to fit every space. Plus, education is included to ensure that training is delivered with confidence. You need to jump online and check this out right now. Go to precor.com/fitness business podcast. Hi everyone, Chantal here. Thank you for joining me again for this week's throwback episode. This is where we take a little trip down memory lane and I share some of my all-time favorite episodes from the first 5 years of the show. This week's featured episode stars a very well-known leader in the global fitness industry, Bedros Keuilian. Bedros Keuilian is a best-selling author, speaker, and business consultant, and he joined us in episode 118 to talk about marketing, leadership, and team building. Specifically, we discussed lead generation opportunities outside of funnel pages, how to connect with prospects using Facebook Messenger, and how to create a team of all-stars. If you haven't yet heard that episode, then make sure you take a listen today simply by clicking on the link in today's show notes or head over to fitnessbusinesspodcast.com and search for episode number 118. Happy listening.
Head on over to our show notes located at fitnessbusinesspodcast.com for more information on Ursa and Brent Darden. Next up, a special message from our founding partner, Active Management.
Hi, FBP family. It's JT from Active Management, the founding partner of the Fitness Business Podcast. Thanks to the amazing technology at our fingertips, we can now work with clients all over the world. But right now, you can join the free online Active Management Facebook community. It's an amazing group of people just like you. Sure, I share weekly resources, but it's the power of the community that you will experience that will make this your go-to Facebook group. Remember, it's free, fun, and inspirational. Go to facebook.com/groups/Active Management Community.
What you leave behind is not what's engraved in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others.